All right, Tougies, take episode 51.
Yeah,
the
the big
51st
51.
in a series of unlimited episodes.
Well, it's going to be an ending at some point, but I'm
That's
going to be
true.
morbid about it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll be one of those things where, like, after Siskel died of lung cancer, it was like Roger Ebert gives it 2 thumbs up. It's like, oh, he had to use both his hands this time. So, yeah, no one thinks about that. It's like it used to be Siskel and Ebert give it 2 thumbs up. So that's a thumbs up from each guy. Now Roger's doing all he's doing all the lifting. It's fine.
So would you, if it's me, would you rename the podcast? Would it become like Deej's Discourse?
Oh man, I don't know. I think I'd call it Tougies Took.
Can we just end the show there? A minute and 10 seconds into it? Do we need to do the rest of this podcast?
I don't know, but I think that's a record for us getting a title down.
Oh my god.
That certainly beats. I was going to try and force in a fish joke and make the title Fish Marner, but I think this is fine.
Oh
I think Tougies Took's way better than Fish Marner. Well, speaking of dead folks, so today's hockey trivia is going to be a lot of early NHL stuff, but like basic early NHL stuff, nothing too crazy.
Okay.
And I figure it'd be nice to get back to hockey because there's not a lot of it.
Instead of Freeport, Maine facts.
Freeport, Maine facts is like, I hope they credit me on their pamphlets because they certainly got one.
They should. I'll try to. I'll make an appeal.
So here we go. Question number 1. Who scored the very first goal in NHL history?
Dick Clapper.
That'd be amazing. You got none of that right. It was Dave Ritchie.
Yeah.
He was a defenseman for the Montreal Wanderers.
Uh-huh.
Although technically, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he more filled the position of a rover on the team. But yeah, he opened their inaugural season, and it ended up being a 10-9 victory. Because I believe the other team's goalie didn't show up, is what it seems like.
We didn't have goalies at the time, and it was called ice rugby.
So here's a fun fact about the Montreal Wanderers. They had to withdraw from the NHL just a few weeks in because their home rink was destroyed in a fire and the rest of the NHL redrafted all their players. So he actually ended up on the original Ottawa Senators, which I don't know who they eventually became, but that was what happened.
Nothing good.
Yeah, he could have used the Ottawa Firemen. So here's a question. Who was the very first commissioner in the NHL?
King Clancy.
So I love this. It's Gary Bettman. He was the first commissioner.
I was going to say that sarcastically.
Yeah, I really wish you would have. I was kind of hoping you would. That was because, like, I mean, anybody else is just going to be, it's like, I don't know, is a guy named after a trophy? Like, that's the only other possible answer.
I was going to say Gary Bettman Sr. I really should have done it.
Which he technically is. Yeah, did you know that before that, the NHL had a president? And it was Gil Stein. And so they decided, the owners decided to put in a puppet government. That's essentially what happened. They wanted to modernize their views. Okay, so this one's, I'm pretty sure you'll know this one. This NHL player, he played for the Chicago Blackhawks, won several goal-scoring titles, several MVPs. He was known as the Golden Jet. Who am I talking about?
Bobby Hull.
Bobby Hull is correct.
Allegedly a horrible person. That was one of the weird things, by the way. Can I just have a tangent about this? Do you remember a couple years ago, like, word came out of like, oh, Bobby Hull's actually a terrible person. But then there was like no follow-up to that whatsoever.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
I don't know. I just, you let Bobby Hull be Bobby Hull, you know? There's no reason to There's no reason to dig up Grandpa's war chest. That is my stuff, you know?
Like, there were 2 women he was married to that accused him of abuse. And then, like, that was in the 80s. And then it got buried. And then, like, 5-6 years ago, it popped up again and then disappeared again. So, I don't know. It sure seems like he's a terrible person. But hey,
at the same time,
the Chicago Blackhawks have never employed a terrible person, though. So I believe Bobby Hull.
He is a complicated figure, though. I do feel like that, yes, there have been several alleged abuse incidents. But also, do you know why Bobby Hull retired from hockey?
I do, actually. And it was because he had a car accident, right?
His girlfriend was in a car accident, and she needed somebody full-time to take care of her. So, you know, everyone used to be a piece of shit. That's, slick back hair, tiny little jean shorts, chicken spaghetti at Ciccolini's. So what was the first NHL team to ever win back-to-back Stanley Cup titles? And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not the Canadiens.
Yeah, I figured it wouldn't be. I figured that was too much of a toss-up. Goodness. Can I get the years, or is that cheating?
1921. We have already mentioned them at one point today.
So it's got to be the Ottawa Senators, then.
It is the Ottawa Senators. In 1921 became the first ever 2-time back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Probably because they had Dave Ritchie.
And then the NHL said, you know what? Actually, our first year is 1924.
Ottawa. One-time all-time NHL scoring leader, Dave Ritchie. For about 5 minutes.
The first and the best.
All right, so let's see. So this was really interesting to me. When I believe it was 1918, they got rid of the forward pass rule, right? You used to only be able to pass backwards. So what year did they get rid of offsides?
God, I wish 2021. Can we get rid of that horrifically outdated rule? Jesus Christ. I mean, is this a trick question? Okay, if it's a trick question, I'm going to say never.
It's not a trick question. It's more of a fun fact question. Like, how long? Think of it this way: how long since they were allowed to do forward passes was the NHL like, this could be a problem?
So, what was the year that they got rid of the forward pass?
I believe it was 1918, but that's just from my memory. I didn't.
So 1919. Like, immediately they're like, nope, we made a mistake.
My favorite part is this is 1930. So it was like 12 years.
Jesus.
You were allowed to cherry pick.
Which again, so what's your opinion on that? I want to know. Do you think, because obviously like in the NHL, in our lifetimes, they got rid of the 2-line pass. Are you on board with the idea of getting rid of offside? Because I am 100% on board for it. I think it just naturally opens the game up a little bit more, makes it faster. And, sure, it's an extra challenge for the defense to have to pay attention, but I like the concept of it. I like the risk reward of maybe having somebody just kind of hang out. And in that way, sure, you could risk the icing, but just send the puck down ice and have your fastest player chase it down and get a quick zone entry. I like the idea of that. I think it adds more strategy than what you currently have now by having offside be a thing.
So I think there's like a couple huge changes it makes, right? Like, one, it completely changes how you carry the puck in.
True.
You're essentially, in one way or another, going to be dumping the puck on every single zone entry.
Depending on the circumstances, but yeah, that's true.
You kind of have to relook at icing again, because what if is it still icing if it's just like a missed pass, Yeah, because the intention wasn't there. The intention wasn't there just to clear the puck out. And then I think it kind of becomes like, I think what actually ends up happening, right, is after 2 or 3 years, hockey becomes a game of 2 forwards with 3 defensemen that are essentially playing in the neutral zone. And it, like, I don't know. I mean, at some point, I think we should cover this, like, because I think it's a very interesting part of hockey history that we should talk about, because it almost never gets mentioned. But in a weird way, it almost becomes similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with the Swedish torpedo system, but that was when they had that that basically 3D 2-forward setup that they won the world championships with that one weird year.
It's an interesting conversation to have. And I think you already mentioned maybe some potential negatives that most people think about when the conversation's brought up. So, hey, maybe it's something we'll cover more in depth later. But, yeah,
I mean, it's definitely like it's something that would change every aspect of the game, though, is what I think. I think it's just the offsides is so crucial to how the game works now. In 1976, this player set an NHL record with 10 points in one game. It was not Wayne Gretzky. He only had 8.
God. Am I thinking of the 7 goals or the 10 points?
I mean, the hint, I can give you a hint if you want it.
Sure.
He played for the Leafs. It was against Boston.
Yeah.
And the Bruins goalie, Dave Reese, retired after the game, which is hilarious.
I know who it is, too. Leafs fans are screaming at me right now because this is... Oh, fucking... It's right there. Damn it. Again, Leafs, don't tell... I know who it is. Leafs fans are screaming at me because it's like the only thing that they have. No offense. Fucking not Daryl Sittler.
Nice. You named
Jesus.
it. You got it.
I just couldn't fucking spit it out. Whew. Okay. We got there, everybody. We got there. My God.
So now that you know it's Sittler, Sittler was also the most recent player to score this many goals in one game.
5?
6.
And
it was that night. Fun fact.
There you go. I wonder who has the most recent 5-goal game in the NHL then. Someone had to have gotten close, right?
That's a good question. Because I know that guy on the Oilers got 8 points. That you don't think of as a goal scorer. I don't know.
See, this is what happens when I add trivia questions to our trivia questions.
I believe Fedorov got there at some... Oh, okay. I know who the most recent player to score 5 goals is, and it happened very recently. I had to think about that for a second.
Connor McDavid.
So Patrick Laine did it in 2018, but actually one player did it since then.
Did Patrick Laine do it in 2018? I thought that was 4.
No, he got 5 apparently.
Jesus. I have no idea. I'm going to stop tanking this show. Who is it?
Mika Zibanejad.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Jesus.
Yeah. When I looked up the stat, I was like, yeah, that game. I forgot about that. He was making up for lost time.
He was. That's God. So it was, So it was very goddamn... I felt like it was recent. It was incredibly recent. So not only have I had Leafs fans yell at me in the past 2 minutes, I've had Rangers fans yell at me in the past 2 minutes. But it's okay because they don't want to think about Mika Zibanejad and how he's going to get traded to the Buffalo Sabres because they don't want to pay him Jack Eichel money. They'd rather just have Jack Eichel for Jack Eichel money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So, final question, and I'm sure you know this one. This NHL team drafted a fake player.
Buffalo Sabres.
So, what I didn't know about this is I knew it had happened in the 11th round, right? And I knew that it was the Sabres. I didn't know that the Sabres were on the butt end of a joke when this happened. I thought it was just the Sabres being like, oh, it's the 11th round.
When have the Buffalo Sabres not been at the butt end of a joke, though?
They refused to acknowledge that the draft pick was fake until like an hour before training camp started, and they couldn't get a hold of him.
Yeah. They held on to it for a while.
He's real. Taro Sugimoto of the Tokyo Katanas is real.
I just love that they thought of the most stereotypical name for the team. Oh yeah, it's the Tokyo Katanas.
Well, so the Sabres GM at the time was a guy named Punch Imlock, so I'm pretty sure that everyone had a normal name to him. I'm pretty sure everyone had a normal name compared to Punch Imlock.
But it's like, it's so disrespectful. Like, you look at
you've got a stereotypical name like Garth. I don't know. Yeah.
God. Like, there have been great names out there, though, in terms of in terms of Japanese ice hockey teams, like the Seibu Prince Rabbits. That was a team. And I mean, there's just the Nippon Paper Cranes. Like, come on. There have been, and of course, shout out to our favorite viewer from Japan, our buddy Coco, and the old Ice Bucks. Also a current team. There have been some great names. So I'm just saying. Punch Imlach, uncreative, potentially racist. Who's to say?
Apparently, his name had appeared in several NHL publications, and they were just like, oh, whatever.
So wait, well, one of these days, either on this podcast or on a video, we will cover the full story of Mr. Sugimoto and the Buffalo Sabres just never making it better for themselves.
Yeah, it's not great. We'll look into that, though. But I think that does it for today's Warmies. I just wanted to drop some old-time hockey trivia to get the juices flowing. And once again, Tougies Took is brought to you by Manscaped.
Sure. If you want to take care of your Tougies and
carve that memorial. Brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. Manscaped, clean it up. You don't have to burn down the forest. You can just trim the trees. Use 20% off manscaped.com with code Tougie. Free international worldwide shipping.
Indeed.
Your balls will
Again, a big thank you to our friends at Manscaped for supporting us this year. A big thank you to those of you that have used said particular code, whether it be for the Lawnmower 4.0, the Weed Whacker, the Ultra Smooth package. Maybe you got yourself a nice shirt, a fantastic set of boxers. Who's to say? But we thank you regardless. And again, if you haven't checked it out, make sure to do so. Deej, shall we hit them with the intro now?
Yes.
This is the intro now.
And they're back. They're staggered from being hit with the intro.
But don't worry, we're here to catch you and hit you with some of your own questions. Apparently.
That's what I'm talking about. Some viewer questions. Questions from the viewers. People who are sitting on Twitter, realizing that they can type whatever weird shit in the whole world they want, and there is a chance that we'll respond.
Yep.
So, Devin.
Especially in the summer, where we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 hockey things to talk about, like 4 or 5. Like, we have nothing to talk about. So, welcome to a very viewer question based episode once again.
Yeah. So, let's get to it.
So, this Devin question, you already mentioned it. Should I read it or do you want it?
Oh, I feel like I have no idea. So, Devin, or maybe Devon, who's to say, asks, what are the best tourist destinations in the state of Maine?
Somebody didn't listen to the last episode.
Obviously, the desert, the gnome family that lives in the boot, Bug World, the world's only lobster theme park. I don't know if that's real, but it will be soon.
It probably is. Let's be honest.
All I just need is more funding from viewers like you. You can ride on the world's most dangerous roller coaster in the state of Maine, the Claw.
That would have been the name of the episode, but
unfortunately, we have Tougies Took.
Yeah, it was so close. Maine is a very outdoorsy state if you're not going to visit the fabulous Freeport Desert. Lot of different hiking opportunities. Shout out to Mount Katahdin. Try to spell it. You can't. There's a bunch of there's a bunch of things. There's a bunch. Look it up. Go to Freeport. Buy local. Yeah, shout out to Maine. Did you got anything else to add about
no,
my
I think
state?
that's it.
Fair enough. Listen to the last episode, Devin. You'll be impressed. This next question comes from Blake. Would you try or have you had a lasagna sandwich? Deej, this is where we're at now. Here we are.
I'm like in pretty good shape, and I pay attention to everything I eat. And I think this is an obvious no. The lasagna sandwich. I mean, like, if I ever get to a point where it's like I've been awake for 3 days, I'll try anything. Then it's like lasagna sandwich. It's like straight to Napsville.
How high do you have to be to have a lasagna sandwich?
Like, that's a great question.
Like on a scale of 1 to Snoop Dogg at a Triller pay-per-view, how high do you have to be?
You'd have to be like Skank Pit at Real Big Fish high.
Woo. Pretty high. So I'm looking at a picture of a lasagna sandwich. I mean, just no. I don't know, man.
Does it look like a Philly cheesesteak had a baby with a meatball sub?
In a way, like I'm on Sargento.com. Yes, the cheese. Like, I can't lie and say like the lasagna grilled cheese sandwich doesn't look fucking delicious. It also looks like something you'd get at Denny's at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So would I try it? Yeah. Yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna die someday anyway. If I go out with the lasagna grilled cheese in my hand, it was a pretty good life lived.
Yeah. Stay tuned for the Tougies Took special charity episode where we attempt to spread awareness of the dangers of lasagna sandwiches.
It will likely kill me, yes. This next question comes from friend.
How'd he die? He got clogged.
He had a lasagna grilled cheese, and then he went on the claw, and it was just too much for his heart.
Yeah. That'll happen.
This next one comes from our buddy. This is already, again, one of my favorite shows. From our buddy from the Hockey News, one Stephen Ellis. Deej, your thoughts on spaghetti?
I mean, I don't think I've ever really thought about spaghetti. And sometimes I am like, why did those Italians have so many different noodles? It's like, what are they doing to shape the noodles? And so like when I'm aware of things like rigatoni or the other ones,
fettuccine.
I think that's a cheese, maybe. I don't really know. I just feel like spaghetti is really phoning it in this world of in this world of noodling architecture.
All right, everybody. Welcome to our new official game. This will be the clip that goes up on YouTube. With Deej, we are going to play pasta or fake. Pasta or not pasta.
Deej, I am going to name fake names.
I am going to name something, and you have to tell me if it's a pasta.
All right.
Are you ready?
I was born ready. What? Say that again.
Orvichetti.
Fake.
It is real. Oh God. Calamarata.
Calamarata? Mm-hmm. Isn't that a type of olive?
Or is it pasta?
I'm pretty sure it's a type of olive. I know it's actually, yes. It's the rings, right?
It is a tubular pasta. Calamarata. Okay. Beautiful. Alberoni.
Yeah, because it looks like a squid. That's why it's called Calamarata. Yeah, okay, I remember that now. All right,
Alberoni.
Alberoni? That's a guy.
It is. It might be. I don't know. It's not a pasta, though. So that's good. Let's go with Goalie.
Goalie?
Goalie.
Is that like just big ravioli? I'm going to say it's a pasta. It's a pasta.
It is a pasta. It's spaghetti-like.
Oh, it's not like big ravioli?
No, it's
they
not.
They should hire me at Big Pasta.
our favorite front, Big Pasta. Let's go for Stringosi.
Stringosi?
Stringosi.
That's a pasta.
It is.
I'm going to say it's a pasta.
Very much is. Let's go. All right. We're going cavatappi.
Cavatappi?
Cavatappi.
That sounds like a dictator. Not a pasta.
It is a pasta.
Damn it.
In the main event, let's go for Festoni.
Festoni?
Festoni.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to say not a pasta.
It is also a pasta.
So they were all pastas other than Al Brigoli or whatever his name was?
I'm like, do I make some of these up or do I just look at like a big official list of pasta?
So I did bring up a big official list of pasta and thinking I could get around this challenge, and there's just too goddamn many of them to search through.
Exactly.
What I did find out, though, is that there is a pasta called the Sous Philando, and its description is an extremely rare pasta made of thinly pulled and folded dough, which is laid in the sun to dry, and it translates roughly to the threads of God. So put that on my lasagna sandwich.
All right, we're going to have to revisit pasta or not pasta sometime. Also, come up with a better name. Somebody can. It was a very on-the-fly idea, but I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
God. This next question comes from Jake.
Wheat thins. Yeah, what? Sorry, the threads of God. It just looks like somebody put like wheat thins in a bowl of pasta sauce instead of milk. It's not important. Yeah, what's next?
God. This question comes from Jake. Is Detroit basketball back?
No.
Yeah, I agree. I get the idea of Pistons fans being happy. You know, a lot of young players. They just took Cade Cunningham first overall. I hope Detroit basketball's back. You know, growing up, getting to watch like the 04 team with, you know, Rip Hamilton and Ben Wallace crushing it. That was a fun time. And Detroit's pretty much sucked ever since. Also, shout out to the Netflix doc, because, you know, that small company Netflix needs a shout out from a hockey podcast. Yeah. Deej, have you checked out the, I think it's like a 1 hour special about the Malice at the Palace with the former Ron Artest?
Well, that's when all those dudes fought each other.
Yeah. I need to watch it. It looks really good.
Yeah, I didn't.
Coming soon to this show, a review of a basketball documentary on a subject that's nearly 20 years old because nothing's happening in the NHL.
I do remember Ron Artest did like a... What? He changed his name again?
Went to Meta World Peace.
No, he changed it again, though.
Oh, so is he just Ron now?
He's Meta Sandiford Artest. So...
Yeah,
I remember when he was still Meta World Peace, he did a Reddit AMA and he was answering questions about the brawl, but he answered them like through his new like world peace mindset, and it was fascinating. It was just not like...
So on a scale of Snoop Dogg at a Triller pay-per-view to Meta World Peace on a Reddit AMA, how high are you? How high would you have to be to eat the lasagna sandwich?
Oh, I don't know. To eat the lasagna sandwich?
Jesus.
It's hard to say.
Maybe he was just trying to spread his message of peace.
Probably like director of Melrose Place. Hi. That's like, if that was your job, to direct episodes of Melrose Place.
Solid reference. I hope that answers your question, Jake, about Detroit basketball.
Yeah.
Deej, this comes from AJ. Coolest goal from your favorite team? I'm going to say when Marco Sturm scored at the Winter Classic. I'd imagine that was the coolest.
Yeah, probably either Barkov's fake between the legs deke on Bobrovsky when he still played for Columbus, or Steven Weiss's goal to complete a 6-5 down by 4 comeback against the New Jersey Devils in 2011. And he did like he did the full EASHL, like ride your hockey stick like it's a train celly around the ice.
I will say, if we're doing like the first goal that came to mind here for like the coolest one, I hate to say it was against the Florida Panthers, but when Zdeno Chara did a pirouette and it ended up scoring against the Panthers, that is one of the most hilarious goals I've ever seen because it's the slowest 360-degree spin on skates you've ever seen in your life. It's the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how centrifugal force works.
Big tree, turn slow. This next question, that we have a couple of interesting ones here, Deej, that I feel like would lead to some interesting conversation. This one comes from our buddy Piney. Discuss the hypothetical pros and cons of NHL, AHL relegation, and how would you set it up if given control? So, Deej, I want to start with the cons, because I feel like, for the most part, I mean, number one, obviously it would take so much work for this to actually be a thing. You know, you talk about how long it would take for any AHL team to become competitive is why it simply wouldn't work, because obviously the AHL, their reliance on NHL prospects and players to fill out their roster. You talk about how much money is a team in Wilkes-Barre Scranton going to have to appeal to, you know, even fringe NHLers. You know, like, are the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, would they be able to afford paying a team of guys on league minimum NHL deals at $750K? No, they wouldn't. And if they were to get promoted to the NHL, they would clearly have to get a large sum of money just to be able to hit the NHL cap floor. So this would take, I love the idea of promotion relegation. I do. But realistically, how long would it take for AHL teams to become financially stable enough to make this a possibility? It would take a long, long time. I'd love to see it. And in terms of how I would set it up, bottom 3 teams in the NHL by standings, they get dropped. Whoever is the regular season champion in the AHL gets the Calder Cup, if you want, or they just automatically get promoted. Second place team gets promoted as well. And the third and final team would be decided via the playoffs. So very, very, I mean, pretty much identical to what we see with the Premier League and the Championship. So, I mean, the pros of it would be great. Like, just the idea of promotion relegation in a hockey sense in North America, I think would be absolutely fascinating. But the cons are the reason why it would never happen. And it comes down to money.
So I actually think money is actually one of the pros. For this reason. The franchise fee in the AHL is $500,000. That's how much it costs to make an AHL team. The average value of an NHL team is $653 million. That is a no-brainer investment. You make it, you get your AHL team, you hope they get promoted, and then you just sell it to some old asshole, and you're set. You're the old asshole now.
I mean, in theory that works, but like I said, how long would it take up? I mean, I guess you could say, well, if it's a thing, then you're fine, right? Like the idea of like, okay, this just starts, then somebody would have to get promoted. Like the Hershey Bears could get promoted, whether or not they could afford it or not. Like how would that work? You have the Hershey Bears made up of a bunch of guys who would be playing probably in the in the AHL anyway, or the ECHL. Like, just I can't think of how this would work with these teams. And then if a team like Hershey, we just immediately say, okay, no preparation period. This season, the Hershey Bears, top team in the AHL, they get promoted. How does that team change heading into their first season in the NHL? Like, I guess it would be very similar to the Premier League, where you have the you have the newer clubs, the smaller clubs just joining the league, and most of them just try to hold on for survival, whereas some other teams actually have some money and spend it. I wonder how quickly, it would actually adapt to essentially just replicating the Premier League. Maybe it wouldn't take that long.
Yeah. I don't know.
Go ahead.
I feel like it's just too much at once, and that it'll just never happen. And there's too many things to think about.
So, in terms of a question that you could answer, if we stop taking it seriously about the pros and cons of it, aside from the money and the setup side of things, what cons would there be, do you think? Would it affect someone's willingness to invest in the NHL? Or like you said, would it be easier? Are there any obvious cons to the idea of promotion relegation?
Yeah, I think so. I think it suddenly makes it much more difficult. It's just
for example,
you have the advantage in Europe of all of your teams are in a soccer market.
Yeah. Would you have an ownership group willing to pay $800 million to bring in Seattle or however much it was, only to then have that team get relegated?
Yeah, it'd be impossible to expand like that, and it's just it's a lot to think about.
It's so opposite of how I guess the infrastructure of hockey has been set up that it will never happen. I'm convinced. That said, what would you do in terms of how many teams get bumped up, how they earn getting bumped up? How would you at least establish promotion relegation? If it somehow were to make sense, again, I think the pros of it just makes it a lot more interesting. That's fairly obvious. Again, if you have any other pros to add in, that's fine. But in terms of, like I said, 3 teams up, 3 teams down, how would you establish the rules of it?
I think I would do 2 up, 2 down. I think 3 up, 3 down's too many, and 1 up, 1 down just isn't interesting enough because it might just be the same 2 teams trading back and forth every year.
Fair.
I do 2 up, 2 down, and then I would have. I don't even know if I'd necessarily make it a tournament. I think it would just be the bottom 2 finishers in the regular season.
See, I do like the idea of the tournament, even if it's 2 teams. Worst team down, best team from the AHL up, and then the second one could be decided via a tournament. Hell, you could even have it say, the second team from the, so the second team from the AHL is decided by a tournament, and then you could even say, okay, cool, kind of do it like Germany does, where, okay, whoever wins the Calder Cup playoffs then gets the right to face that other team in a 1-all playoff, or, even 2 games home and home, and then whoever wins that little mini series could make it. There's a lot of different ways you could handle it. And obviously the NHL would take the more, whatever route results in them getting more money.
Yeah.
But it is a really interesting topic, and obviously a gigantic hypothetical because it's never going to happen. Like I said, it would change the foundation, the way the sport is built. I think it's just we're too far gone from that being a possibility. Whereas you talk about football and how it's been established throughout basically all of our lifetimes, and it's been that, it's been a factor the entire time. Yeah. So it's not exactly I guess difficult. It's tough, right? Yeah, you have something built up with promotion relegation. It is what it is versus the NHL trying to change it. It wouldn't happen. I'd still love to see it. It would be ridiculous. The idea of, the Buffalo Sabres, and then you got to question how the draft would work, because that would change too. Because if the Buffalo Sabres finish dead last and get relegated, then they're not in the draft, because now they're in the AHL. So you'd have to completely change the draft system as well, would you not?
Yeah, you would. You would have to, in a weird way, you would have to make all the teams more independent. And they would have to get away from the idea of the NHL. The NHL is more like a club.
So, hey, Piney, thank you. Deej, we have another hypothetical. This one is from Dark Void. I don't know what it is about, hey, hypothetical NHL questions. What if Canada decided to pull all Canadian teams out of the NHL and make their own league? How do you think it would work? And what would they do with players' draftees? Would it be at all feasible? And the answer is no. Because if Canada tried to host their own league, all big Canadian players would still go to the NHL. There's far too much money there. You talk about the struggles as it is that Canadian teams have with trying to appeal to get certain players to come to Canada because of the tax situation. Like, that's all we hear about is, well, Montreal can't sign anybody because of the tax situation. So then imagine they have to have their own league. Again, would it work? I don't think so. And then you're talking about how many teams would they have, right? How many teams would they have? Because, you'd have to rely on, and if we talk about the biggest Canadian cities, and we talk about who doesn't have an NHL team, obviously the top 7 Canadian teams are where the 7 NHL teams rely. You'd need Quebec City, Hamilton, Kitchener, London, the last 3 all in Ontario. Again, you could go BC again with Victoria, Halifax, or Nova Scotia, and then Ontario. And then you get like Saskatoon and Saskatchewan, 16th biggest Canadian city with only 220,000 people. An all-Canadian league would be so dependent on Ontario. And how thin can you spread the fans there? You talk about why the Toronto Maple Leafs fan base is so big, and obviously, Toronto proper, essentially. It's listed as a population of 5.4 million people. But then, you have Oshawa and the 300,000 people there. Are they going to be Leafs fans, or are they going to be fans of that particular team? And then if you factor in all the Leafs fans in Windsor becoming fans of the new team there, it's just the population's not there. The money is not there. So I understand the hypothetical, but there is just that would be less likely to me than promotion relegation.
Well, if Canada stops and makes their own league, immediately that league's going to be a second-tier league, It's not like they'll be able to be the best league. And so I think you can immediately make a comparison to the NAHL. The North American Hockey League, the League of Opportunity. They weren't always, I believe at one point they were only Canadian teams. Now they're all over the place, but it's very much cool. It's they got nothing to do on a Thursday night. Let's go to Dollar Ice Cream Night in Amarillo, Texas, and go see the Wranglers. I think it becomes that, because you're already everywhere there could be a CHL team, there's a CHL team in Canada. Everyone has their NHL team, and then if you're going to ask them to further divide, it's just too much. It's just too much. And I get it. If you're from Shreveport, Louisiana, you're a huge Mudbugs fan, then go out Thursday night, Dollar Ice Cream Night. Go to the Mudbugs game. And
the Mudbugs.
It's a real team.
Are they Mud Lobsters?
I believe what they are is a crawdad is what you call that.
That makes sense.
It's like an evil shrimp.
This next question, a tough one. Honestly, I think I don't know. Comes from Brad. Personal favorite goalie masks. It's one of those ones that it's it requires you to think a little bit more, in terms hey, what are the coolest goalie masks that you can recall? Outside of the first thing that comes to mind is for me, Curtis Joseph had a badass mask. Being a Bruins fan, obviously Jerry Cheevers was way up there. There have been some damn cool masks. And plus it's one of those topics where it's visually you kind of need the mask to go along with it. But hey, Brad, I just wanted to give you a shout out. Deej, do any masks come to mind for you though, outside of Brian Elliott's Casey Jones mask that I just remembered too, which is fucking awesome.
There's like the Brian Hayward, like the realistic shark eating his head. I don't know if you remember that from the Sharks in the early 90s. I also like, there's also that like horrific one Carey Price wore for the Heritage Classic, where it was supposed to be like Jacques Plante's face.
Oh my God. I remember that one.
I also really like the idea, like if I was a goalie and I got like a custom mask done, it would like, I feel like you just have to do Calvin pissing on the side. Like that's like, but like on a regular hockey stick is what I would have it be.
Oh my God.
Because that's at the end of the day, the tool that slays you.
Next question comes from Rodrigo. How does Madden look so far, and what needs to / could be changed for better gameplay? Now, in terms of the gameplay question, I mean, everything would have to be changed. Like, it's literally just the foundation in which the game is built. It's kind of the solution to every sports game. I think Deej would agree. Like, you're not going to fix NHL, Madden, FIFA, whatever, without essentially rebuilding it from the ground up. Because at the end of the day, your base layer is still your base layer. So, in terms of what needs to be made for better gameplay, I mean, again, it would probably take a complete overhaul, more than likely. That said, I'm very much enjoying Madden so far. I won't sit here and say it's an amazing game, but it is kind of the same thing every year, where I understand what Madden is. Madden is not this pinnacle of simulation football. The best way to explain it is Madden is Madden. And while I do love football, you talk about being able to accept Madden for what it is, where for NHL being my favorite sport, you look at the video game and I'm just like, man, I want this to be better. But I can enjoy it for what it is. And I think if you don't always compare it, and it's tough, if you don't always compare it to what Madden used to be and how good Madden used to be and how good the NFL 2K games were, I think you can enjoy it for what it is. I will say, and I've said the same thing on stream over the past couple of nights, I think if anybody is kind of on the fringe about wanting to pick up Madden, like, look, there's always $20-$30 knocked off by Black Friday, which I can't believe it is only 3 months away. So wait a couple months, pick it up in the holiday season. Let's be honest, most people can't get it on a next-gen console anyway. So, hey, wait it out for now. But I'm enjoying it quite a bit. And I will say, like, visually, it looks better. They did a pretty good job making it look like a more next-gen game. It's not Red Dead in terms of the graphics. But I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I've been digging it. The momentum stuff can make you a little seasick, but I've been enjoying it.
That is true. There are some weird visual aspects to the game now with the stadium specific ability type of things. So yeah, Rodrigo, check it out. Check it out. I do recommend it, but just know that Madden's Madden, basically. This next question comes from Z-Pops. Deej, who is going to be the best quarterback from this most recent NFL draft class, and why is it Mac Jones? Now, he mentions why is it Mac Jones because I don't know if you saw my stream last night playing Madden. But an incredible moment with Mac Jones happened. And I don't want to ruin it because it will be uploaded to my second channel, of course, TWOGIE24. That's Tougie24. The home of all non-NHL content for me. Make sure to subscribe. And also subscribe to our podcast channel, specifically. Again, trying to get to 1,000 subs as quickly as possible because we are taking a small hit financially. That said, though,
I got to keep the other lights on.
Yeah.
That's why it's so dark in here.
With the quarterback class, first round picks, you had Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville, Zach Wilson to the Jets, Trey Lance to San Francisco, Justin Fields to Chicago, and Mac Jones to New England. Outside of that, you also had Kyle Trask to Tampa, Kellen Mond to Minnesota, Davis Mills to Houston, Ian Book to the Saints, and Sam Ehlinger to the Colts. So my question, just to kind of get us into a bracket, Will the best quarterback from this draft come from the first round or outside the first round?
I think for sure the first round.
Yeah, it'd be very surprising for one of those outside QBs to make it. So that brings us, again, to the 5 quarterbacks that I mentioned. Who are you leaning towards? Because obviously, like the easy pick could be Trevor Lawrence being first overall. You talk about some of the situations that, other quarterbacks are inheriting. Obviously, Mac Jones gets to work with the greatest head coach of all time. You have Trey Lance in San Francisco, Justin Fields in Chicago, where, hey, good things could happen. I mean, those teams do have a relatively strong foundation, especially defensively, that could allow, take some of the pressure off offensively and let them, develop into the role. Who are you leaning towards?
Well, first, let me mention the guys outside of the first round. I am very intrigued by Ian Book and Davis Mills because we could see them both start at some point this year, purely because of the situation they are in.
Yeah, so I mean, with Davis Mills, it's more so, is Deshaun Watson actually going to start for Houston?
And then with Ian Book, it depends, like, which Jameis Winston are you going to get? Because it's very obvious that I don't even remember his name, even though they say it 12 times for broadcast. Hill. Yeah, Taysom Hill is not a quarterback. Like, that is obvious. He is not that. So I'm interested in those two. But for the guys in the top 5, I think purely face value ability, Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback. Definitely hair. But I think for the next couple of years, I think people are going to be talking about Trey Lance like he was the best in this quarterback, because even though quarterback is a large part of your team, I think that going into this year, and I don't even think it's close, I think Trey Lance has the best surrounding cast of any of these guys. And that takes so much pressure off of, like, let's say you're Trevor Lawrence. Let's say you are that stud quarterback that got drafted first overall. There are so many positions around you that you need to improve, that your play has to mask those mistakes. And that's just not going to happen for a rookie quarterback. And so I think for the first few years, we're going to see Trey Lance. People are going to be like, oh my God, he's the guy. Like, why didn't Jacksonville take him? He's so good. Because that's how football fans talk in my head.
But no, that's just how they talk.
Yeah. They're just wearing their basketball shorts. They got their keys on a lanyard. They're wearing socks with the slippy, slidey Adidas sandals. And they're just like, why wouldn't you take Trey Lance? Because that's what happens. I don't know. That's my opinion. I think Trevor Lawrence does end up being the best, though. I was having this discussion with one of my friends the other day. Like, in the last 5 years, amongst the major sports, scouts are very rarely wrong anymore, especially in the first round.
We had mentioned this at the start of the show here, or before we started recording, and I do want to mention this. And we did look at the big 4 sports in terms of number 1 draft picks in the last 10 years. So in the NBA, for the most part, they've all been hits, I would say. Going back to 2011, Kyrie Irving, big time player. Anthony Davis, big time player. You have the one kind of exception with Anthony Bennett in Cleveland. But Andrew Wiggins, even though he didn't play for Cleveland, solid player. He got dealt to Minnesota, was there for almost a decade. Karl Anthony Towns, Ben Simmons. Say what you want about Ben Simmons, especially after the most recent playoff performance, but he's not a bust. He's not Anthony Bennett. Markel Fultz, solid. DeAndre Ayton just went to an NBA final. Zion, Anthony Edwards, and then Cade Cunningham. So really only one notable miss there. In the NFL, we haven't had a miss of a first overall pick since Jamarcus Russell in 2007. Jake Long made 4 Pro Bowls. Matt Stafford's made a Pro Bowl. Sam Bradford won Rookie of the Year. Cam Newton went to 3 Pro Bowls and won the MVP in 2015. Andrew Luck was a 4-time Pro Bowler. Eric Fisher made 2 Pro Bowls and won a Super Bowl. Jadeveon Clowney, 3-time Pro Bowler. Jameis Winston made a Pro Bowl. Jared Goff made 2 Pro Bowls and went to a Super Bowl. Myles Garrett, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence. No misses there since 2007. And then, obviously, baseball is tough. But like 2011, Garrett Cole and Carlos Correa. You do have guys like Mark Appel, Brady Aiken. But you also have Dansby Swanson, who's obviously playing now for the Braves, not for the Diamondbacks who drafted him. Baseball's a little bit tough, but for the most part, you have a pretty good amount of players who look to be solid. And then the NHL, we haven't had a miss since Nail Yakupov. Everyone else has been solid. So to Deej's credit, I mean, yeah, very, very rarely are scouts wrong. And you would think that Trevor Lawrence would at least be a very, very solid quarterback for Jacksonville. The problem is I can see all 5 of these quarterbacks being very, very good. You know, I mean, they're obviously the most doubt comes about Mac Jones. Some people had him in the first round, some didn't. You know, I don't know yet. Obviously, I'm very much backing the idea of Mac Jones being an amazing quarterback. As a Patriots fan, here's hoping. Like, as you mentioned, I had the same point. Trey Lance, Justin Fields, really good insulation surrounding them, especially on the defensive side. It takes some of that pressure off. And then you get to Zach Wilson, which I think Zach Wilson has the potential to be an absolutely incredible quarterback. The problem is he plays for the New York Jets.
Yeah, and it's just not going to work out.
I cannot bet on the New York Jets to not ruin a quarterback. I'm sorry, Jets fans, but I know you have the same concerns. It's coming from a Patriots fan. Take it for what you will. But you could say Zach Wilson's better than any other quarterback that they have had in the last 10, 15 years. But, man, do the Jets have a way. They just have a way. So, you know, I got to side with Trevor Lawrence as well, but also Jacksonville. Will they turn it around? It's tough.
Yeah.
Mac Jones is my answer, though.
I mean, Trevor Lawrence going, he's got DJ Shark to throw to. So, he's got that number 1 receiver.
Mm.
So if I had to rank them real quick, it would probably be like Lawrence, Lance, Jones, Fields, Wilson. And I put Fields so low because I don't know if you've seen this, and this just came out earlier today. He is struggling to outperform Andy Dalton in training camp.
Yeah, so I saw the Andy Dalton quote where he's like, hey, Fields is going to be great, but right now is my time, along those lines. So, yeah, there's a chance that Andy Dalton's going to outperform him, whereas you look at like Mac Jones, and he's at least outperformed Cam Newton so far. And, if you sit here and talk about, well, who's better between Cam Newton and Andy Dalton, I think for the most part, you'd say Newton probably has a higher ceiling, but they're both kind of along the same lines of they are not what they used to be. And then one rookie quarterback's out dueling one while the other's not. So it's kind of interesting how that lines up.
Well, the other thing that's interesting, too, is of all of these players, Justin Fields had the worst QB rating after the first preseason game. And he only played against the Dolphins' third stringers, which is not great. So I'm going to say Fields is probably a year or two out at this point.
Fair enough. So, hey, some football talk. Deej, with that, shall we get into some hockey talk? I think we can, we've talked about some stuff here.
Football.
We've talked about some football. We've talked about
Bug
everything.
World. The Claw. We've talked about lasagna sandwiches. We've talked about noodles. We talked about Calvin pissing.
Let's talk some puck,
which
is just delightful. So we had a couple of signings, really, literally just a couple. There were 2 that were notable here. UC Saros re-signs in Nashville, 4 years, $5 million per. Number 1, great deal, as the most comparable contracts for UC Saros here are Thatcher Demko, which, I mean, I'm sorry, but you look at the body of work Saros has put up compared to Demko so far, I really like that deal. Shesterkin, which again, Shesterkin hasn't been bad, limited sample size. So the fact that Nashville were able to sign UC Saros, in my opinion, for a lot less than I would have thought. I mean, he has to he's making less than Matt Murray in Ottawa. Like, that's absurd. He's making, I believe, let's see, Tristan Jarry's making 3.5. It had him as a somewhat comparable, but he's making less than Matt Murray. I believe he's making less. Yeah, he's making less than Shesterkin. And he's making the same amount as Thatcher Demko. Like, this is just a fantastic deal for Nashville.
Yeah. I'm actually pretty shocked here. And it's really interesting because I think this is a perfect deal to set them up for UC Saros eventually handing the net over to one Yaroslav Askarov.
Yeah, so Saros's deal ends when he's 30. So the thought, Askarov will be in his early 20s and probably ready to go.
Yeah. So I think that's a fantastic work by Dave Boyle, a man who really needed a win.
That he did. So Nashville right now, in terms of projected cap, I don't believe there's anybody on their roster that is projected to be on IR. So Nashville right now, projected cap hit $68.7 million, leaving them with $12.7 million to play with. All they have to do is re-sign RFA Eli Tolvanen. So I'm intrigued to know if Nashville's done. I mean, the idea of leaving that cap space open isn't a horrible idea. But also, I mean, there's some depth options out there. But for the most part, I look at their roster and it looks set. It doesn't look great, but it looks set. So I'm intrigued to see what Nashville does here. I mean, they are over the cap basement, the cap floor, so they're good to go in that regard. But yeah, overall, just kind of intrigued to see what they do, if anything. But yeah, I agree. This was definitely a win for them.
Yeah. That just, I don't know. Yeah, that team needs a few pieces, and this isn't the year to get them.
Cap Friendly has their projected lines like this: Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, Luke Cunnin, Matt Duchene, Mikhail Granlund, Rocco Grimaldi, Tolvanen, Glass, Cousins, Jeannot, Sissons, Olivier. The defense is projected to be Yossi Carrier, Ekholm, Myers, Borowiecki, Fabro, with Saros and Riddick in goal. And then scratches could be the likes of Trennan, Matt Luff, Matt Benning on defense. And obviously they might have some younger guys who could step into the lineup. But yeah, needless to say, unless something drastic happens, do not expect us to predict the Nashville Predators being a playoff team.
Yeah, especially, I've got to imagine this is going to be a quote-unquote refuel season for them with, yes. I imagine we see Matthias Ekholm and Phil Forsberg flipped at the deadline for a King's ransom.
100% they're going to get dealt.
Even Rocco Grimaldi.
So yeah, in terms of upcoming deals, I mean, Forsberg's going to be a UFA. Grimaldi's going to be a UFA. Nick Cousins, and then the big one is Ekholm. Borowiecki is also up. So yeah, they are going to tear things down even further, I would imagine. So
yeah,
definitely rebuilding after an end of an era, and obviously Pekka Rinne retiring. So yeah, they'll we'll see what they'll do in the long run, but obviously short term they're going to be pretty tragic. And then the Minnesota Wild re-signed Kevin Fiala. It is a 1-year deal with a $5.1 million cap hit. Key to that is it's essentially a prove-it deal, which I did not think they were going to be able to sign him to. I have to be honest. I thought Fiala would be able to command more term, but it's a 1-year deal. He's an RFA at the end of it, so he does have the ability to say, hey, I deserve more money, which for Minnesota is a little bit scary because, again, the dead cap from Parise and Suter goes from 4.7 to 12.7 next year. And if Kevin Fiala has a great season, he's going to command more than $5.1 million. Like, you're not going to be like, okay, now I'll take $5 million for 6 years. Like, no, he's going to want 6+ if he has that good of a year. So it's a pretty risky move, I would say, to sign Kevin Fiala to this deal. It helps out short term, but if he does have a great season, which he could, I mean, you are talking about a player that, I mean, he had a 48-point season. In Nashville, he had a 54-point season in his first full year with Minnesota in 64 games. It could be a pretty pricey contract when they can necessarily not afford to have that. Maybe.
Yeah.
At least Victor Rask's deal is up at the end of the year, so maybe that's where the majority of that money goes.
As is that giant Goligoski contract is a 1 year as well.
Which, again, I don't understand. I mean, I do. You get the idea of Suter, and there could be a recapture, but just keep Ryan Suter if you're going to pay Goligoski that much.
Stupid.
Jesus Christ.
So I don't. Yeah, if Kaprizov doesn't resign here, this team's boned. Joel Eriksson is their number one center. Which, don't get me wrong, he's not bad. Like, he's good. He's just, I don't. Do you really want him to be your number one center?
So at this point, though, Fiala took maybe a little bit less than I thought. They have $13 million to re-sign Kaprizov. I don't believe anybody on their roster is projected to go to LTIR. They have $13 million to work with. They have the money to re-sign Kaprizov. Again, my problem was with this from the beginning is this team needs a little bit more. It's not enough to re-sign Kaprizov, ideally for 7 or 8. If it's 10, then whatever. That still leaves you with some cap room to work with, but there's not, like, you're still watching some names go off the free agent market that could really help you because, again, we'll go off of what Cap Friendly has as a projected depth chart. Granted, this was at the end of July. Greenway, Eriksson, Foligno. I don't know if that would necessarily be your top line, but okay. I mean, they're not horrible players, certainly. Kaprizov, Rask, Zuccarello. Again, not bad. Fiala, Hartman, Bjugstad. I think personally you could use some help in that bottom 6 because I think ideally, I mean, Bjugstad had 17 points in 44 games last year. You could have him on the third line. But then your fourth line is projected to be Kyle Rao, Nico Sturm, and Frederick Goodrow. Nico Sturm had 17 points in 50 games last year with 11 goals. Frederick Goodrow had 10 points in 19 games. But are those the guys you necessarily want to bank on? I don't know. Again, I think there could be some money well spent there, and a lot of names that could have helped are off the market now. And defensively, it's Brodin Dumba, which is phenomenal. Goligoski Spurgeon, which should still be pretty good. And then Kulikov and John Merrill, which isn't the worst. But, like, point being, again, I still completely stand by my opinion that by having to wait to get these deals done, Minnesota has probably missed out on the depth that they need to compete with the Colorados of the world, with the Vegases of the world, to try and make a solid run. We've seen it with Montreal. Any team can go on a run like that, but I don't know. Like, just for me, like, you talk about as a betting man, but for me with Minnesota, it's just tough to look at that and be like, yeah, I have even more confidence now than I would have had in them last year. Like, I don't, like, have they gotten better? Have they gotten better this offseason, aside from saying, well, the young guys have more experience? Because I don't think they have.
Tougie, I will disagree on their depth, though, right? And my argument is this. If they re-sign Kaprizov and you add Marco Rossi, both those guys immediately go into the top 6, and then you take 2 guys from their top 6, put them in their bottom 6, and then Kyle Rao and Freddie Gaudreau can go play with, I don't even know if it's still the Iowa Wild.
It is. Well, Kaprizov was factored in. I will say, in regards to Rossi, like, I rated him highly out of the draft, but again, he didn't play a lot of hockey over the past year because of COVID. I don't know if I could necessarily bank on Marco Rossi being a guy to just jump in and be fantastic, you know?
That's fair. I think, that's reasonable. I mean, the defensive depth is definitely there. Like, they either Kevin, I have no idea how to pronounce his last name, Kevin Kuzman or Dakota Mermis.
Churchman, for God's sake.
He's wrong. You have guys that can be your 7th defenseman, which I think is important on a team like this. You add Dmitry Kulikov, which I believe he can be a second pairing guy.
I do like Kulikov a lot. I'll give you that.
I see. He was so money with the Panthers years ago that I always have a positive opinion of him. So I don't think this team is necessarily as weak as they look on paper right now. I don't know, though. It's one of those things, right, where I guess it might be too dependent on Marco Rossi. And then you look at their prospect cupboard, and there's really no one else that could skate right in this upcoming year. So, yeah, they should just pay the man. It's if you don't sign him, like, getting him on a deal does nothing for your franchise. You know? Like, for the next few years, it does absolutely nothing for you. And then losing out on him altogether is, like, almost a death blow because your fans have been suffering long enough. They see light at the end of the tunnel, and then there's a cave collapse. Like, what do you want?
It's very tough. It's very tough. I just think you look at this squad. It's good, but they would have to perform above the sum of their parts to win a championship. And I don't know if that's necessarily where you want to be. That's all. You know, I like Minnesota a lot, but you know, it's just tough to on this day envision them going beyond a Colorado, beyond a Vegas. That's all.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, hey, other random stuff in the hockey world here as we wrap up the show. I will say I keep getting tagged on Twitter and other viewer questions. If we didn't get to your question, hey, ask us again later on this week. Please do. But quickly, Deej, a question for you. I saw this stat on Reddit. Alex Ovechkin, in terms of goal scoring, he is 1 goal away from tying Marcel Dion. He's going to do that. He's 11 goals away from tying Brett Hull
before they hatch.
Barring injury, he is 1 goal away from tying Marcel Dion. He will do that. He is 11 away from tying Brett Hull. Barring injury, he will do that. He is 36 goals away from tying Jaromir Jagr for 3rd all-time in goals in the NHL. Barring he stays healthy, does he pass Jaromir Jagr this season?
Absolutely, because now he's armed with the greatest weapon you can have, and that's knowledge.
Alex Ovechkin, PhD. So, yeah, I want your take on that. He needs 37 goals to move into 3rd all-time in goals in the NHL.
I mean, if I'm looking at it, there's only been twice in his career where he scored under that. So, I guess actually 3 times. I don't know. I still think he does it. It's just he's got a PhD. He's got kids. Like, he got injured for the first time ever, and now he's just like doing everything he can to never be injured again. And now he's probably doing some weird science.
Weird Russian science. That sweet, weird Russian science. We have a note as well. The Marc-Andre Flurry trade. The Vegas Golden Knights have placed Mikael Hakkarainen on unconditional waivers for the purpose of a mutual contract termination. He was the lone piece that Vegas got back from Chicago in the Flurry deal. It's still kind of crazy to think about, isn't it, that we literally just witnessed a Vezina winner get traded essentially for nothing.
Yeah, welcome to the flat cap. The flat cap only benefited 32 people. You know, the owners are I don't want to pay these guys.
Not
Tell
wrong.
them, Gary, we killed the president for you. How's that for a callback? You know, it's one of those things where we're just seeing weird stuff happen. That's 2 times this year. We saw a reasonable roster player traded for absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And so I really need this to come full circle by Mikael Hakkarainen re-signing with the Blackhawks.
That would be fantastic. Indeed,
full Trojan horse.
Our final talking point for the show today, also confirmation. NHL jersey patches are official. NHL owners have approved jersey patches for the 2022-23 season, so we won't see them this year. It'll be the year after. The ads must fit a rectangle 3 inches by 3.5 inches, making them slightly bigger than NBA patches. And obviously, we've seen a lot of outrage, and we had talked about this earlier, not all that long ago. The idea of people saying, when does it stop? And, oh, cool, so do we get less ads now? And look, we all know, like, if there's money to be made, millionaires and billionaires are going to try to make it. Am I bothered by this? No, because I saw it coming. Like, yeah, ideally, this wouldn't have to happen. And the trade-off, and it doesn't have to happen, but ideally this wouldn't happen. And in a great world, the trade-off would be you end up with less advertisements, or it's like the Premier League, where you get 45 plus minutes of uninterrupted play, and then all the commercials at halftime. But that's not going to happen because that's not how fucking America works. It's just not. So, I don't know. Maybe, Deej, I've just given up the good fight and have accepted my reality for what it is. I don't know. But I'm not all that worried about this. I mean, again, I think the people who are being overly sensationalistic about like, oh, well, now it's just going to end up like German league jerseys. And I mean, let me find it really quickly for those of you who are watching the video portion of this podcast. But it's going to end up, and if you've watched the stream, you've seen my Chris Rumble jersey from the Easter Lone Roosters of the DEL, which, yeah, I mean, has advertisements all over the fucking thing. It does. It's great, including a patch for an athletic company. It's great. But of course, people are like, oh, it's going to end up like that. And no, likely it won't. Maybe it will. But I don't view this as a big deal. I view it like the helmet ads. Yes, we're kind of getting screwed over. But let's be honest. This path was already paved, each. In terms of, did NHL owners feel like they could get away with this? Why did they feel like they could get away with this? Well, let's see. Number one, it's the American way. But it started off with the idea of, oh, let's put ads on the boards and advertise to people that way and get some extra money. Then it turned into, of course, obviously you have broadcast sponsorships. Shout out to the, every advertisement in the world. Here's our McDonald's halftime show and the final 5 minutes of regulation brought to you by Audi and that goal brought to you by Ford. We've had that for God knows how long. But then was a big enough fight put up when they decided to add, advertisements on the ice, advertisements on the back glass. Like, we're too far gone. We're too far gone, and obviously this was going to happen. So, I don't know. Deej, your thoughts? I'm really not all that worried by it. Maybe, again, it's because I saw, these type of ads on AHL jerseys for years, but this was just expected. I mean, the outrage needed to happen before this.
Well, I've got a couple points here. And so the first, I'll make them in the order that my brain made them. I'm sure I could have woven a sick narrative, but I just don't have that kind of time. So the first thing I thought was I'm okay with the NBA jersey advertisements, right? This is similar to the NBA one. It is bigger, but hockey jerseys are bigger than NBA jerseys. So as a percentage, it's probably maybe even smaller,
Yeah.
So secondly, I thought about how I'm a big NASCAR fan.
Mm-hmm.
I cheer for new advertisements. I look them up because advertisements are basically the same thing as jerseys in NASCAR.
Yeah. It's the concept of in NASCAR, this team has a new sponsorship. That means they have more money and might be able to be more competitive or not fold as a team.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because NASCAR, one of the reasons I think a lot of people are okay with it being so sponsorship heavy, one of the reasons I think people are okay with professional soccer teams having so much ad space in their jersey, like teams don't have logos, they have ads,
Well, I mean, they do have the logo, but it's just.
I mean, they have logos, but you know what I mean on the front crest. The front crest. Yeah. Let me be more specific. The front crest. Neither of those sports really have a time for a TV timeout.
Exactly.
And so it makes sense for the constant ads. That makes sense. I think the last place we'll see it is the NFL.
I'm shocked the NFL hasn't done it yet, if I'm being honest.
Because the football fans are the angriest group of people.
It's fair.
So I think I'm okay with them keeping it in step with basketball. But let's go 70 years in the future, right? I'm 102 years old. I'm recording the 1000th episode of Tougies Took. I think, I mean, where this all heads is not the German jersey. It's not the Extraliga jerseys. It's not this. It's where it heads is NASCAR. Where it heads is the Premier League, where the identity of the team ceases to be the Boston Bruins or the Florida Panthers, and it becomes the advertisement, which originally that's how teams were. It was the local business that sponsored them, you know? Like way back when, before the history of professional sports leagues, and even in some early professional sports leagues. And I think what we are seeing is an awkward 50-year-long transition phase until we are back to the Ford Broncos, brought to you by Ford in Ford Arena. Like that's, I mean, like I know that's funny, but like that's what happens here. And I'm not against it because it's an inevitability. Like what I say about it doesn't mean anything. What anyone thinks of it doesn't mean anything. They would have to piss off. They would have to do enough to piss off every single hockey fan at once for it to do anything. That said, the problem I have with this, and this is the final point I'll make, and they're not going to do any of this, otherwise they would have told us. It would have been great if they addressed this with us, where like, hey, we're putting ads on the jersey. We know people aren't going to like this, but it's going to lead to less TV ad time. Jerseys are going to be a little bit cheaper, and we're going to use the extra money to raise the salary cap. They're not fucking doing that. They're using it to buy yachts. And I think that's why people are upset. They're like, we're just putting jersey. If we're putting ads on, what are you doing with the money? Oh, that's not a question you're allowed to ask right now. And that's the problem, is they're telling us they're making a bunch of money, but they're not telling us what they're doing with it.
And I never, in that situation, expected an answer. You know, like it's the NHL. Like that level of transparency is there, and let's be honest, we probably know the answer. So,
yeah, I just, that's something. Life lessons with Deej. If anyone ever in your personal life or a company you're working for or anything like this does something to make money, right? And is not struggling, where they're not in a way where they need where you understand, like, oh yeah, he goes to work every day so he can pay rent, pay off his mortgage. If somebody does something to make money and there is no apparent reason for what that money's for, that person's a huge piece of shit. Like they are using it for something fucked up. And that's a lesson you can apply to your life.
He's not wrong, folks. He's not wrong. Deej, I think that about does it for today. Not bad to get an hour and a half just about out of a show where we had 5 hockey topics to discuss. But hey, because of our great viewers helping us out with those questions.
Yeah, I think I'll end today's episode with a thought I had this week.
Yeah.
I was in a CVS, which stands for nothing, by the way. You should look that up. That's enraging. It's just letters. I was in a CVS and I was walking out, and they, how like when there's new products and they're like, let's have the cows that we're having, that are being farmed. Let's have them look at these products to purchase. There was a bag of Lay's potato chips, but they were flavored nacho cheesier Doritos. So they're Lay's, but they're nacho cheesier Doritos flavored. And I almost went straight to the ER because I thought I was having a fucking stroke. I was like... Anyway, that's been episode 51, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Tougie's Take is a Deej Audio podcast. Deej Audio, you're listening to it. We'll see you back for episode 52. Tougie, do you have a Jon Stewart Daily Show style final thought?
Always remember to brush your teeth at least 2 times a day, but also floss, because nothing makes listening to this podcast worse than having a toothache while doing it.
Yeah. It's like, don't be like me, kids. Don't learn this the hard way.
Goodbye, everybody.
I gotta have someone chew my soup for me. Good night, everybody.
We'll see you later this week.